Welcome back. So Australia's left-wing Prime Minister Anthony Albanese was in the United States last week, and according to the Biden White House, he was here to talk about collaborating on innovation. But they may have had a very different agenda, actually. You see, over at the United Nations, the globalists who want to rule the world are quickly working on what they call the, quote, global biodiversity framework. So what's in this framework exactly? Well, among other things, it calls for 30% of all land area to be set aside for conservation while funneling hundreds of billions, yes, with a B, of dollars out of America and other rich nations into so-called developing countries. It calls for slashing industry and for placing regulations on agriculture in order to control it. So what does that have to do with Australia exactly? Well, as a part of this visit, the EPA and the Australian Department of Climate Change have signed a memorandum of understanding. As part of this new memorandum, both countries are going to engage in so-called natural capital accounting. This means tracking all natural assets, whether it's water or air or soil or minerals, all for the sake of managing them. This is all a prelude to strict regulating. Who's allowed to receive what? Households will get a ration of water based on their social credit score, and if your score dips low enough, no more water for you. The possible scenarios are endless for how this will kill people. I mean, obviously, low social credit. Well, now you can't farm, you can't eat meat, you can't drive a gas-powered car. Our friend Maria Z is in Australia. She's digging deep into this UN agenda, and she joins us now. Maria Z, long time no see. Thank you so much for being back. We appreciate it. What do you know about this?
Thank you, Stu. This is a very complex web that they have created here, and the ways in which they will achieve this goal are many. But it's important for not only Australians and Americans to understand this, but literally every country in the world that's part of the United Nations, which is essentially all of them. The UN is going to take at least 30% of US and Australian land, but it's past 30%. I'll explain in a moment. But our governments specifically are working together to get it done. So as you mentioned, Anthony Albanese was in the US last week. I want to reference a few things from this presser that the White House released. Microsoft is investing $5 billion in Australia to help build what they call 6 cyber shields, which are expected to be in place by 2030. This is a key year for them. And Australia is expected to be apparently the world leader in, quote, all things cyber. So this is really about is expanding the digital dictatorship of the UN 100 model. The UN 100 and the age of global enlightenment is a plot to transfer everyone into a digital life with AI at the helm. The plan in its essence is that humans will have no interaction with nature or real life whatsoever, and they won't even really live out their real lives. It's all going to be done in the metaverse with AI at the helm. It's vital to pay attention when they're investing in anything cyber or cloud related. I really encourage people to go back and watch the 4-part series I did on this network, on Uncensored, on the UN 100, so that they can understand this plot. But this does link also into the natural capital accounting that you were just discussing. I will talk about that in a moment. But the presser lists advances in the Net Zero Technology Acceleration Partnership, which has one of their goals listed as carbon dioxide removal, including direct air capture. In case anyone's missed this, CO2 is the gas of life. We need it. They also state that non-CO2 pollutants are the key driver of climate change. Therefore, both countries will take, quote, strong action to mitigate methane specifically. What does this mean? Eliminating agriculture and killing livestock like they're doing in Ireland. Now, this is where it gets more interesting. The US Environmental Protection Agency, as you mentioned, is being set up with the Australian Department of Climate Change. And what they're saying is that they are going to promote what they call a bilateral cooperation between Australia and the United States. Both countries, along with the EU, are going to implement this natural capital accounting. And as you so adequately put it, this is essentially taking stocks of all of the world's natural assets, all living things. Water is one of those. And yes, an example of how this can be weaponized against the people is controlling water to households based on their social credit scores. We know from Tom Renz that they've created a digital ledger where everything, including houses, resources, trees, is going to be restricted based on a social credit system and a CBDC. So it's not a stretch to say this. Australia and the US are planning to link up again in October of 2024 to discuss their progress on natural capital accounting at what they call the Global Nature Positive Summit. On the page of this summit, they reference the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This framework was established following the announcement for the UN's goal for 30 by 30, which they say is conservation and protecting the environment, but is actually about stripping countries of 30% of ownership of their land and handing it over to the UN under the name of conservation. Australia recently held a referendum where they pretended that they care about Aboriginal people, which they never have, and want to enshrine them into the Constitution. But what this was really about was UNDRIP, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. And whilst this document is very fluffy, and by the way, America's signed on to this, well, approved this document as well. It pretends that it cares about Indigenous people. Ultimately, Article 46 says that they will be subjected to the United Nations. So we're still battling against UNDRIP here, but because Australians rejected this en masse, they're trying in a different way now through a US partnership and establishment of this EPA. And both countries are fully committed to the UN 30 by 30 goal, but it doesn't end there. I want to tell everyone, the Council of Foreign Relations has made it clear they're working in the shadows, but really pulling many strings in reality. And they have said, and I quote, "Some experts call for protecting 50% of the planet, an initiative known as the Half Earth Project, while some Indigenous communities call for 80%. So there you have it, folks. 30% of conservation efforts is the initial goal, but really what it is 80%. Pushing people into smart cities, saying this land is now off limits, we have to conserve it. The bottom line is that every country that is a part of the United Nations needs to demand an exit from this terrorist organization. And Stu, I'm formally declaring them a terrorist organization right here today. Google defines terrorism as the unlawful use of violence and intimidation, especially against civilians in the pursuit of political aims. And the United Nations, World Economic Forum, and World Health Organization all meet this definition. We must demand to have nothing to do with them from today, not now, not ever again.
Including the Council on Foreign Relations, another terrorist group, enemy combatants, really, and they ought to be treated accordingly, along with the ADL, who, by the way, is largely supporting shutting off water to those in Gaza and on the Gaza Strip. They shut off water for these people. Now, we can live for weeks without food, but we will all be dead in just a matter of days without water. They're going to turn off your water and kill you if you don't agree with their Marxist agendas. That's what they're saying. If you're not going to allow us to take your children and mutilate their genitals and then have unfettered sexual access to them, guess what? No water. If you're not going to allow black criminal thugs to riot with impunity in your country and cause $12 billion in damage over a 3-month period in the name of a home invading thug that we declare a saint and a hero, guess what? No water. If you're not going to support military interventions in the enrichment of the elites in the Washington, D.C. Beltway or elsewhere, if you're not going to allow CBDC, if you're not going to allow us to usher you around, get in your pod and eat your bugs, guess what? No water. That's what's happening here. And if you think that they're not going to come for your guns, what will people do if they don't have water? Well, they're going to shoot someone to get it, right? I mean, that's what desperate people do when they need to keep their children alive. So they're going to come and get your guns first. And this is all part of the United Nations. These are the blue helmets that'll be going door to door. I've said this a bunch of times. It's not hyperbole. It's not conspiracy theory. It's not radical or extreme. The only radical extremists are those inside of this fake murderous corporate crime syndicate calling itself a government, and they are after your children. Maria Z, excellent report. Thank you so much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Stu. God bless.
I really wish I didn't have to bring you this disgusting news. But you know that holster company that I've been working with as a sponsor for the past 4 months, Vanish Holsters, they've just been banned. Yeah, even though they're legally allowed to purchase it, Amazon, Google, and Facebook just banned it for sale to more than 7.7 million Americans who live in a certain state. Now, the good news is they can't stop me or us from getting it in their hands, or in your hands, for that matter. Now, crazy enough, the reason that it was banned is because that holster, Vanish Holster, enhances the concealment of a weapon better than just about any other holster on the market. And even better, it works with 99% of all semi-auto handguns. It works without a tactical belt. It lets you carry in multiple positions. It carries 2 fully loaded magazines. Best of all, using my link, you get it for $40 off. So lock in your special pricing right now. Go to vanish.com/Stu. Again, that's vnsh.com/Stu. Again, vnsh.com/Stu.
It's everywhere. Mainstream media is howling about the new COVID variants. They are offering free vaccines and boosters, but people are waking up to their BS and not falling for their lies any longer. God gave us a brain to think and an immune system to fight off evil forces and the devilish diseases that have been unleashed on humanity. We don't want to die suddenly. We want to live fully. We don't want to alter genetics. We want to strengthen the body we have already been blessed with. Try our immune protocol today. It has 15 flu-fighting ingredients, including vitamin C, D, zinc, quercetin, magnesium, elderberry, turmeric, and more. You don't need blood clots. You don't need cardiac arrest. You don't need big pharma. You need an immune system that will stand up to tyranny. You need our immune protocol. Visit pandemicprotocol.com to fight through this flu season and beat the next bioweapon variant with an all-natural, non-GMO solution. Go to pandemicprotocol.com today.
Well, I don't know about you, but off and on, I've had trouble sleeping for years. Actually, the majority of Americans struggle to get the sleep that they need. A friend of mine told me that it might be a magnesium deficiency, so I tried a whole bunch of supplements and none of it worked. Well, finally, thanks to this program, I was introduced to nutrition scientist and champion bodybuilder Wade Lightheart, and he told me there's actually 7 types of magnesium, and your body needs all 7 in order to get the proper sleep that some of these other companies advertise but just don't produce. Problem is, because of industrial fertilizers, basically all the food that we eat is now deficient in magnesium. Magnesium Breakthrough is the only full-spectrum supplement that includes all 7 forms of magnesium that's on the market. And let me tell you, this stuff actually works. Not only did it finally fix my sleep, but the energy levels that I've experienced have gone through the roof as well. To learn more about Magnesium Breakthrough, go to magbreakthrough.com/StuPeters. Use promo code StuPeters10 to get 10% off your first bottle. You'll be glad that you did. magbreakthrough.com/StuPeters.